My fantasy footballers, what is popping? It is your boy Mark here, Marky Sports. I'm back at it again, and we are focusing today's video on a key fantasy football breakouts, fantasy sleepers, who you should be looking out as a potential league winner, somebody that you can get late in the draft that's a very, very high value, and some sleepers, maybe some people that you haven't really thought of that I can maybe bring a little bit of attention to. Guys, before we get into it, if you haven't already, check some of the other videos out. If you love fantasy football, if you love sports, NFL content, you're going to love the channel. So go ahead and smash that subscribe button below, and it'll help me out quite a ton. So, guys, let's really get right into it more than anything, right? When we look at breakout players and we look at value picks, what we look at is guys that maybe you don't hear about a lot being talked about. They're obviously not being drafted high, but due to certain situations, whether it's they're kind of buried a little bit on the roster now, or they're just extremely talented players that have a potential to break out if certain scenarios come up. Those are some of my sleepers. In terms of the value, who are some guys that are getting drafted in the 10th, 11th, 12th round that you could take some flyers on, take some risk, but I think will give you a huge return on your investment when it comes to fantasy football. And when you really break it down, guys, when I look at it in terms of the quarterback position, one of the guys that comes to mind for me is Dak Prescott. Right now, I think a lot of the times people they always tend to they have a hard time separating their personal feelings about a player versus them in fantasy. And in order to be really successful in fantasy, you've got to just take all that personal bias out, right? Dak Prescott gets a lot of hate, some of it deserving, some of it not. I know he plays for the Cowboys, which is a really easy franchise to hate in general, which makes sense. But Dak Prescott is consistent as it comes when it comes to not just playing quarterback, but being a quarterback in fantasy. Um, he's a consistent top 10 finisher, many times top five. He was number 4 last year. Um, and he doesn't always go very high because he doesn't have the most upside when it comes to the use of his legs. But he still had, a couple hundred yards rushing last year. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, 34 touchdowns, I believe that it was. He was a fantasy stud. He was consistent as it gets. And there's no reason to think this year that he wouldn't be second year in this offense, right? And I really like what he could do with CD Lamb, and I think that's a really sexy stack having CD Lamb and him if possible. But right now, he's being drafted on average as the 8th quarterback in fantasy football, behind guys like Kyler Murray, Jordan Love, Joe Burrow, Anthony Richardson, C.J. Stroud, and obviously the top 3 in Lamar and Jalen, Patrick Mahomes, or top 4, and Josh Allen, right? And he's getting drafted in the 12th, 13th round and many times. And that's just free money, easy money for him. You could build up the front of your roster if you want to, and you could wait to pick up somebody like a Dak Prescott and feel super comfortable with him at the later part of your draft. So I really love that value there. Another guy that I think kind of fits that mold as well as Jared Goff, right? Jared Goff is going after unknown rookie guys like Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. But all he's done is be extremely consistent in fantasy. If you love your team, if you're going high risk, high reward players, you might have the opportunity to really love somebody like Jared Goff. If you just need your quarterback to get you 15, 20 fantasy points a game, he's pretty much a lock for that. Doesn't do much at all with his legs, but he's somebody that you could probably even pick up on the waiver wire, to be honest with you. So he's a really, really good value and somebody that you should definitely keep tabs on should you need somebody to fill in. Another guy that I really like a lot is James Cook on the running backs, right? So James Cook is one of the guys that I think can have a breakout season for Buffalo. He's getting drafted right now as the 12th overall back, but he's got top 5 upside just by being in a really good offense. If he's somebody that can just get 20% more opportunities in the goal line and in the red zone than he did last year, and not get so many touchdowns taken away from him from Josh Allen, he could be extremely relevant. But I see him having a pretty major uptick in his uh, amount of carries that he's getting, a big uptick in the amount of balls that he's catching. I think he's a really complete back, and I think that he's a really solid player. Another guy is Zamir White. Right now, Zamir White might be one of the most polarizing players in fantasy this year because not a lot of people really understand what he's about, right? Or what to expect from this Vegas offense. Some people think that the Vegas offense is going to be really bad. Some people don't think Zamir White's that good. But one thing I could tell you just by being a Bronco fan and watching him, he's a really explosive player. He's a very good runner. He's a good running back. I don't know how he's going to be used in the pass game is going to be determined. But Vegas under Antonio Pierce is going to be one of those teams that they might not get a lot of wins, but I think they're going to be in a lot more games than you think. I think they're going to be tough. They're going to be hard to kind of put away. And as long as the game script stays consistent, Zamir White's going to have his opportunity to eat, and they're going to rely on him a lot because they know that without a good run game, Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell, or it's Gardner Minshew now, but they're not going to have a lot of chance for success. And he's somebody that you could pick up, you know, as your RB2 in round 7 or 8 in many cases, which is crazy because he's a starting running back. So depending on your strategy, if you go, you know, uh, let's say you go running back, receiver, receiver, receiver to really stack up on the receivers, and then maybe pick up a tight end or a quarterback. You could rely on Zamir White late to be your RB2. He's not going to be a sexy pick, but he's somebody that I think can be extremely solid for you overall. Another guy on my sleep list is Zach Moss, and I get why he's going so late. He's on average he's the 28th running back taken off the board, right? Um, and I can understand why because a lot of people talk about Chase Brown, but man, anytime Zach Moss has gotten an opportunity to start and get a lot of carries, he's been unbelievably efficient. He's even shown that he can catch the ball out of the backfield. And Cincinnati's got a good offense. I don't know how much of a downgrade he necessarily is from Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon, I felt like was always an overrated player when it comes to fantasy. And so if he's getting that kind of um, opportunity, then I think he could really pay dividends given where he's drafted, right? Is he going to be better than Joe Mixon was? I mean, no, but Joe Mixon was also drafted significantly higher and he came at a more premium cost. So keep tabs on Zach Moss. I would recommend a handcuff hardcore with him in case something happens. Then you can have a guy that could potentially be a starter. But I love Zach Moss and I love the value, and I think he's a huge a guy to keep tabs on as well. One of my sleepers, my big sleeper for the running back position is for this season is Rico Dowdle with Dallas. Dallas right now kind of has a problem. I think that they're really trying to convince themselves that Zeke looks better than, Zeke looks good, or he's looking like the old Zeke, and it's not the case. And I think early on they're going to try to ride the Zeke train, and they're going to realize that the guy's just washed. He's got way too much tread on his tires, and they might start to lean a little bit more on somebody like Rico Dowdle. And for somebody that had Tony Pollard last year, that drafted him in the first round, that was really high on him, I was really frustrated because he took a lot of touchdowns from him. But the guy looks good when he plays. And I think by midseason, he's somebody that can get a majority of those Dallas Cowboys rushing attempts. And if that's the case, man, he's going to pay dividends. He is somebody that is getting drafted behind some kickers. So keep some tabs on Rico Dowdle, man. I really, really like that. Wide receiver is a tough one because there's so many and it's so subjective, and it's like basically your flavor of the day, right? But the fact that somebody like a Cooper Cup has been drafted as late as he is, it's almost like the league forgot about Cooper Cup and who the hell he is. And I get that there's Puka Nakua there. I really do understand it, but this is still going to be a team that throws the ball a lot. It's still a Sean McVay offense. And Cooper Cup is about as good and as solid as they come if he can stay healthy. So he's got wide receiver one upside without a doubt, but he's the 17th on average receiver that's being taken. So he's been taken more as a wide receiver two or a flex play. I think he can have some huge dividend payoff for you. Another guy is Deontay Johnson with Carolina, right? Deontay Johnson, for one thing that we know, extremely talented, one of the better route runners, one of the better separators in the NFL. He's always just been really good, and lately, in last couple years in Pittsburgh, the touchdowns just haven't been there, right? He hasn't had those touchdown opportunities. But I think that those are things that are just not really sustainable. Not saying that Pittsburgh was a really bad offense, and not saying Carolina is going to be a lot better. But what I do know is he's going to get a lot more opportunities. He's going to get the ball thrown to him quite a bit. They gave up, they gave up a lot. They paid the man a lot to get him, and so he's a bona fide wide receiver one, not just in the NFL, but on this Carolina team, and being taken as almost the 40th wide receiver off the board. It's crazy. You got guys like Xavier Worthy, right? I mean, I get he's a rookie, but playing at Kansas City, you don't know how many targets he's going to get. Uh, you know, uh, guys like Jaden Reed in Green Bay. If he can't stay healthy, who knows what he's going to be? Tank Dell's the third guy in Houston. Right? Those are all good players, but they're all going a bit ahead of Deontay Johnson. And Deontay Johnson's got a track record of being a really good player. And Carolina's a bad team, and bad teams are throwing the ball a lot late in games. And so he's somebody that could be a garbage time king for you. So for a player that's being drafted as a wide receiver for somebody that you're spot starting at best, pick him up, and he could be somebody that you could start every single week and get a really, really good return on your investment. So I really like that a lot. And one of my sleepers this year, my biggest sleeper, is Jackson Smith and Jigba with the Seattle Seahawks. He's somebody who's being drafted 45th right now. He's even lower than Deontay. But Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think, has got ridiculous talent. I love the year one to year two bump. He's ranked as low as he is because you still got Metcalf and Tyler Lockett ahead of him. But I think he's somebody that is going to be focused on a little bit more on the offense, especially as Tyler Lockett gets a little bit older in age. And he's one injury away from being an absolute star. And I really like his skill set. I think he's an unbelievably talented player. And if he can get his target share up to, 7 to 10 targets a game, I think he can be somebody that could be a really, really exciting player. So look out for him. And a special rookie sleeper is Brian Thomas. Everybody's talking about Marvin Harrison. They're talking about Malik Neighbors, rightfully so. Those guys are studs. They're talking about Xavier Worthy, Rome Dunze, all studs. But Brian Thomas Jr., man, is somebody that ridiculously talented. I loved him in the pre-draft process. I actually wanted the Broncos to take him if he was available, maybe in the second round or moving up for him in the third. But he's a hell of a player. And Jacksonville is somebody that targeted Calvin Ridley a lot last year. They targeted the receiving core a lot last year. Calvin Ridley's gone. Somebody's got to take up uh, some of those passes. And I think he's not only extremely talented, but he's going to get a pretty decent amount of opportunities there in Jacksonville. So really like Brian Thomas. I think he's uber talented, and I think he could be really solid as a sleeper too. And now we go into tight ends, right? And finally, guys, we have a year where tight ends is a much deeper class. There's a lot of really good, talented young tight ends, which I think this league has been missing. And one of the guys that I like a lot as my sleeper is Cole Kmet, because all Cole Kmet did last year was ball, right? I mean, whenever the guy got the opportunity to play, he was playing super well. He had 79 catches last year, over 700 yards, 6 touchdowns. He was really solid for the Bears. I think the Bears offense is going to be better. Now, I think that they're going to be spreading the ball out more, but Cole Kmet could still be a very solid fantasy player, especially if he builds a good rapport with Caleb Williams and becomes a red zone threat. And he's undrafted in many leagues actually. So I really like him. And another special pick, just a sleeper. So Cole Kmet's my value pick. My sleeper pick in this one is Isaiah Likely, just because I think he's a talent that could start on 20 NFL teams right now. He's really good. Now, having Mark Andrews ahead of him obviously hurts him a lot from fantasy, but he's somebody that, man, if he can get a little bit more involved in the offense, whether it be because of injury or just because they can't keep him off the field, he could be really good. But it's always a smart thing to draft Isaiah Likely, because especially if you have Mark Andrews, because if Mark Andrews goes down, Isaiah Likely's proven to be somebody that can step in and be a pretty productive tight end as well. So wanted to give a special shout out there. And of course, another big time sleeper, somebody that is ranked way too low. As the 30th ranked tight end, he's going 29th of all the tight ends. He's going undrafted in almost every league. Is Greg Dulcich. This isn't a Broncos bias, but trust me, guys, I've seen it. When this guy is healthy, he's ridiculous. He's a very, very good player, very productive. And for somebody, you could pick up on the waivers or with the last pick, even after you get your defense and your kicker, he's somebody that I think can pay off heavily for your team and be a really solid, productive tight end, um, especially in what I think is going to be a much improved Denver offense. Let me know what y'all think. We got some more fantasy content coming, but that's going to wrap up today's video. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Um, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and until next time, peace out.